Hello and welcome to another episode. Today we will be talking with Dr. Charryse Johnson, who is a psychotherapist, expert mental health consultant, mindfulness practitioner, author, keynote speaker, and we will talk about all sorts of things. Dr. Charryse will share a little bit about her story of overcoming trauma and healing and learning. As part of her work, she's been part of conducting international research geared towards reducing the stigma around mental health. And she is a strong community advocate and always has been a great voice for helping people feel better, live better. And today we will specifically talk a lot about seasonal affective disorder. We will talk about how the seasons and how the weather can really impact our moods, how this can come in waves and leading to feelings of sluggishness and kind of need for more sleep and unpredictable cravings. And we will share a lot of great practical tips and insights, and we will receive a lot of permissions to take better care of ourselves. So without any further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Dr. Charryse Johnson.
But before we get on with our fantastic conversation, I just want to remind you about our Patreon account where we put all the wonderful gold nuggets that we get. And today we got a really great one with some permission in it. And that is something that is always useful to have and to utilize. Our Patreon is where we are putting little snippets from older episodes in that you can get the questions that are asked and answered by our wonderful guests. So you don't have to scroll through 2.5 years of episodes to try and find little bits of advice, little bits of nuggets. Those will be on the free membership, but the paid membership is where you get the gold nuggets. Plus Lenka and I in future will be doing some live Zoom calls, and we will be adding some different content. It's not pricey. We have done it as reasonably as we can, but it's a community that we want to build because we are passionate about helping people to find more life in their lives. But now let's get back to talking with Dr. Charryse, because she has some great tips, great advice about having more life in one's life.
We can never do proper justice to introducing our guests, and we love our guests to tell us a bit more about them, like who are you and what brings you here. So without any further ado, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a big question. Who am I? I always start off with saying I'm the youngest of 8. I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers. That is just a central part of me. I'm a lover of life. I feel like that's very, very important to me. And I'm very passionate about us feeling human, us feeling whole, and us feeling like better as possible. And for me, that comes from my own story of having a really difficult childhood and moments through life and wanting to break the cycle or decide I don't want to feel this way forever. And so I always count it such a privilege to be here. I'm also a mom. I have 2 children. My daughter is 24 and my son is 23. And I love all things people, yoga, and shopping. That's my other real gift.
Oh my gosh, I love that. This is such a sweet and loving and really personal introduction. So thank you so much. I would like us to start a little bit more looking at your journey. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about, what made you you, what made you to embark on this journey of
Yeah.
helping and healing. There's always so much that we go through ourselves in our lives that
Mhm.
impact what career we choose, often where we pivot and how
Yeah.
we evolve as human beings. And for us in this
Mhm.
podcast and for our listeners, it's always so interesting to know, what
Yeah.
made you you the way you
Mhm.
are today.
Sure. So I was raised by a single parent for most of my life, and I in no way see that as a downside, but it's just a reality of life that is very unique and very different. Along the way, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, which is something that I didn't recall until later in high school. And if I'm honest, that was actually the most pivotal point of me having that flashback, recognizing what had occurred, and then putting dots together and going, okay, this makes a lot of sense around some attitudes that I've had towards myself, towards my body, towards relationships. and me feeling very overwhelmed by that. It was for me a family member. So there's also that dynamic of guilt and shame, and it's been so long, and is it okay to say anything? What do I do with this information? So that created a personal journey of me kind of reaching out for support. I wasn't in a moment in a season in life where I could afford a therapist. So it started off with being able to read books or to find other individuals that were trusted in me, which then led me into college and kind of looking at what do I want to study. And ironically, I studied two things in my undergrad: music, vocal music. So my first degree is in vocal music. And then a dual degree was in human development and family studies. So I actually integrate a lot of music therapy and somatic approaches in what I do. And it just continued from there. I loved the fact that I realized that there was hope and that there was a way to feel better, that I didn't have to see myself through the lens of everything that I've been through. And then in particular, I did want to be in relationship with a partner and really felt like in order for me to do that well, I'm going to have to get past some of these walls that I have put up around not wanting to need anybody and being hyper independent and not trusting anybody but myself. And so that path took me then into my master's in professional counseling and then later a doctorate in counseling psychology with an emphasis in trauma and crisis, which has been unfortunately extremely helpful over the last several years. But I always try to reach into spaces that other people may not be looking for. Everybody doesn't want to do therapy. Everyone doesn't believe in therapy, but I think there's so much power in our story. A lot of times as therapists, we're taught not to share our story. But I also feel like that is completely unfair to ask someone to sit down and give me all this vulnerable information and for me not to appropriately be able to say, I can resonate. I will not say that I understand your journey, but I can resonate. And I feel like that has been an amazing connector. So I do all kinds of things to also make sure if someone can't access therapy, they, like this podcast, can still access expert information that they can trust.
That's so wonderful because, yes, we need to be able to relate to people, to open up, to be able to share. There is this connection that we need. And if there's complete wall, and if there's complete professionalism, if there's complete detachment from, yes, I'm this authority, I'm this expert who is here to heal you. And I come from this almost elevated state of, I'm here to teach you and to show you and to guide you rather than of course, I have some skills, I have some knowledge, and I have some tools that can help you. But I've also been there and experienced it. And again, you don't need to share your trauma and you don't need to really put all of your pain onto other people. But this ability to resonate, this ability to open up, I think it's very appropriate. And again, just go with your gut and flow to how much is necessary. But that's such a wonderful point that you made.
Yeah. And I also want people to know no one knows what you need more than you do, right? So I am really just here to hold space with you, to sit with you, and maybe be one of the few people in your life that doesn't run away when things are hard, or to let you know whether you're in a great mood or whether you're in a really hard mood, like you can come. And I'm here to help you answer the questions, find what you need within, choose for yourself what you want and what you need. So I really see it more as a partnership because I won't be in your life forever. And I want you to be confident in who you are and what you're capable of.
That's so sweet. I know that we started going quite deep, quite quickly with your story, and maybe for a little while we will switch up and go in a different direction. And if it makes sense, and if we come to it ways, we can come back to it. But one of the questions, one of the reasons why we really reached out to wanted to have you on the podcast is we are now in the Northern Hemisphere coming into winter times. I'm in the Czech Republic where my favorite season of dark and miserable is upon us, where it's cloudy and rainy and cold and just annoying for months and just straight. And there's lots of people around the world struggling with the winter times, with the darker times, with this meh kind of a weather where all day, every day, we have the same level of grayness, plus the cold, plus the wind, plus the rain, plus the snow. And we know now that SAD, the seasonal affective disorder, is something that lots of people struggle with. So I would love to chat with you about your experience dealing with people, helping people, understanding SAD, and giving us and our listeners some tips and insights into what can we do for our health, our well-being in the coming months when we're dealing with whatever the world, whatever the seasons are throwing our way.
Yeah, seasonal affect disorder is very real and can be very sneaky. A lot of times it starts in September, regardless of what hemisphere you're in. It doesn't have to be completely dark and miserable for it to begin, but what you start to see is this slow energy shift. So you used to wake up, right, at this certain time with energy, and then all of a sudden you don't want to get up quite at the same time. So you're going to feel some brain fog, a little lower energy, a little lack of concentration. We see appetite changes. We see sleep changes where you may want to sleep even more and then not quite understand why you feel that way. Then you add anything else that you mentioned that's going on in life and in the world, and that can be layered. And seasonal affect can exist anywhere from September until typically March. So it's a very long season, but it is possible to get through it well if you're first willing to acknowledge it. So I often will encourage people. I start talking about it every year with the people in my life in late summer, because what I'm trying to get them to do is to go ahead and start looking ahead and being a little proactive to it. So even though we're further in, I do just want to say when you're heading into the season, things that can be helpful is one, making sure that you actually know where your blood work is. And here's why. We often are lower in vitamin D, which adds to the heaviness of seasonal affect. That vitamin D we typically get a lot of during the spring and summer, but that could also be different if you now work from home and you haven't been out as much, or depending upon the melanin of your skin, how much sun you need. So you having low vitamin D levels and then taking vitamin D accordingly can be extremely helpful. And so making sure your vitamin D, your vitamin B12, and your B1 are accurate from like a biological aspect. You also can eat certain foods that are very helpful in terms of the nutrients that you can use. A lot of soups, a lot of root vegetables, a lot of lighter fare helps us. So if we're already feeling sluggish and we do have this desire for comfort food, it doesn't mean that you don't want to eat food that you enjoy, but you want to notice, is that tanking me even lower than before? The last thing that I'll mention that can be extremely helpful is a happy light. You can purchase those on Amazon, in sometimes most department stores or Target. I don't know what kind of stores you have or listeners have near them, but I actually have one that those that are watching this on video may see. Utilizing that every day at a 45-degree angle at the beginning of the day gives our eyes and brain and emotions a similar form of dopamine that we would get during the summer. And it is one of the most useful ways to help combat the impact of seasonal affect.
It's such a great point that light plays a crucial role. We obviously know that because we started talking about the weather, the sunshine, the sun is not around. So we can do a lot with replacing or try to help with the right kind of a light. But also, we live in a world where we're looking at screens all the time. So we feel like we have enough light because there's screen in our face all the time. But there isn't a light as a light. There is a, good light and bad light and, positive reinforcement and negative things. I know personally that in the past couple of years, I really noticed that from around October time, when we really start getting the shorter days, I realized that I don't want to work after 4 or 5 o'clock when it's dark outside, because I don't want to be looking at the screen. Just the light becomes too hard. It's overstimulating. Even if I have all the wonderful filters that I need and all the glasses that I should, it's still too much. So I really try to shift my schedule and start maybe earlier, have shorter working days, have more of a balance, and then spend most of my evenings reading books and living by a candlelight, because again, light replacing the sunshine with other natural forms of light, for me, fire, candlelight wonderful stimulating thing. Is there anything like that that you would also found helpful and recommend to people?
Yeah, you are right on track. The light that we get from phones and our screens actually has the opposite effect of a candle or a happy light or certain kind of lights that we have in our home. Actually, we found specifically for those working from home, and we did a lot of research on it during COVID, staring at the screen actually overwhelms our nervous system and drains us. So you also imagine that if you're working, you're on the screen. Have you ever had that moment at the end of it where you feel like my brain wants to do things that are active, but my body doesn't want to kind of go in line with it? So stepping away from your screen periodically. So I love that you're able to adjust your schedule. And what I often encourage people, if you're in a position where you can't adjust your schedule, then be intentional about making sure that you're getting up and you're taking a break and you're walking away from the computer, that you are spending time sitting at the table. And even the dark clouds during the day still provide a level of sunlight. So still finding some time, if it's not too cold, to get outside is a great way to enhance your mood. And then making sure that you don't go from the screens, adjusting your day, and then turn the lights down, because it can often be kind of habit that if we're feeling low, then we're in low light. But I would actually encourage you this time of year to make sure that you have lights on, that you have candles, and along with candles, scents help as a sensory dynamic to lift our mood. So it's a really great time to burn a diffuser, essential oils, light a candle, have music playing in the background. So that's what helps lift us, and almost kind of creating the atmosphere that you miss about earlier in the year. The last thing that I'll say is you may even want to make adjustment to some of the things in your home, bringing in things that have color and texture. We often sometimes do it if we celebrate for holidays and we realize like, oh, I feel so excited because I'm doing this holiday and I've put these colors. That's something that you can do whether you celebrate a holiday or not. Just adding in color to the room helps lighten you as well through this dark season.
It's so interesting that you're bringing all sorts of sensory experience. Obviously, we started talking with eyes because it's the most obvious thing when it comes to anything. Our eyes are the main source of information. But then you were mentioning, the food that we eat, obviously the taste, as well as the nutrition that comes through it, the smells, the scents, even the touches. And when you were talking, you said, when it's not too cold, and my brain went to like, I love cold exposure. So it's like, it's never too cold for me, even though I hate the miserable gray weather. I don't mind cold, physical. But there is some, again, beautiful science that shows around cold exposure, cold showers, cold dips and stuff like that potentially can help, again, raise and elevate our mood. Is there anything, obviously, cold exposure, one thing, other things that could be working again with our senses, with maybe our body temperature, with our touch, that
Yes.
our listeners can try if they are
Sure.
willing?
Yes. So part of why I said colors and textures is trying to bring in blankets or pillows that are soft or have some type of texture that you like rubbing your hands around. Yes, I constantly keep that with me. I also have in my office and in various offices, for example, a little plug-in waterfall. So that white noise and that sound, water tends to be a very soothing sound for us, or a white noise. We may not be running a fan per se during that time, but that's another dynamic. When someone is feeling overwhelmed or sad or sluggish, having an environment that you enjoy, being in a space that you enjoy, and even bringing your hands around a pillow and holding that pillow in also kind of gives us a hug. That may seem kind of like odd or weird, but a lot of times because of the weather, we're not as social. And so also if you're a person that lives by yourself, then you want to make sure that you are getting in appropriate touch, rubbing of the blanket, the pillow, or I'll often encourage people get together and be intentional about getting together with other people and getting out of the house, because that elevates us, especially if they're people that we genuinely enjoy. Everybody could bring a food that they enjoy and come together. The last thing that I'll say on the temperature, there's actually a skill in a mode of therapy called DBT that's called TIP, which is tipping your body temperature in order to shift. So when you said shower, sometimes I'll encourage people, if you are struggling, take a cold shower to the degree that you can tolerate the cold. And within 1 to 5 minutes, you will find that it lifts. Or even holding a warm cup of something in your hand is a way that we soothe. It's why we love coffee. It's why that we love tea. Or if you're feeling really angry and down, holding ice in your hand moves all of the anxiety and the aggression that you may feel into your hands until it melts and moves away. And those things really do seem so different than what we're used to. But I always tell people, I dare you to try them, because you're going to find that they're very accessible and very simple things to do, so that you don't feel like you just have to sit and deal with it all.
And it's sometimes the simple which can be very, very helpful. So thank you for those tips, those it's stuff that we can do wherever we are. Okay, it might not necessarily be easy to get hold of an ice cube, but we can always try and have a tray of ice in our freezers or something. So thank you, because I love simple tools that work, because I think quite often we overcomplicate things. We need to have things that are so complicated, which means we won't do it because we're overwhelmed and it's complicated. So I love your tips. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question for you. Is normally I'm in the UK. It's grey in the UK. It's grey in the UK. I would say about 11 to 10 months of the year. So we don't even get the summer. Sometimes we can go whole summers just grey, and it's just depressing. But I'm now in South Africa for a couple of months, and I've got beautiful sunshine. It's boiling hot, which I'm complaining to everybody, as you do, but it's blue skies and just warm and lots of vitamin D and everything else. So my question to you is, do you notice a difference between sort of Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere with regards to SAD? I know that in, the winters are different. The winters are in the sort of June, July, August time in the Southern Hemispheres. But in South Africa, you still got the blue skies. You've still got the sunshine. It's not that gray. It's cold, but it's not gray and cold. Does that make a difference, or is it more the sunlight or the lack of sunlight and the gray as opposed to the cold?
Yeah, it makes a significant difference. And we do know from research that the sunlight and the gray plays a significant part. People who live in the UK or areas that are darker, if we look at the US, if they live in Washington State or the Northeast, their degree and the intensity of their seasonal affect is usually significantly higher than someone who is getting that morning sunlight. Part of that as well, sun, as we talk about taking through the eyes, also helps with our melatonin and our serotonin. And our serotonin is our mood transmitter. So when we wake up to sun and have an opportunity to be out in it, we are naturally going to be more lifted than if we've been in those gray skies and we're really fighting to keep that part of us up. And it doesn't mean that people can't see a shift in their mood during those fall months, but we unequivocally know that the sunlight, the skies, the clouds do play a role, and people that are in darker areas will feel it significantly more, which is why we sometimes see that individuals who have the ability to do so will live multiple places. We'll be here during this part of the year, and when it starts to get darker, they move or go stay with other individuals in warmer seasons because they've spent too many seasons feeling so low, and it can be really debilitating. The last thing I'll say, if someone already struggles with anxiety and depression, they are at a higher risk for that dark and gray, and seasonal affect can take them to a much lower place. So that is where I've seen families who said, we need to move. Like, it actually isn't ideal for our family to be here, because what happens to us during those darker months is not good for us personally and not good for our relationship.
One thing that I've been aware of, and I've looked into it a little bit, is the Danish do this. They have this hygge, which is, there's no English word for it. It's
Sure.
just hygge, but they really live two separate lives. They have their summer life and a winter life. And hygge is all about that life balance. In winter, it's very much about the fire, having a fire in your home. It's about having family around you. It's about bringing in the cozy. It's about slowing down and very much finding ways that you can just go through the winters in a way that suits. And of course, then in the summer, they go to the other extreme, and it's very much everything's outdoors, and there's a lot of, they do a lot with family and friends, and they all have like summer homes. I say all, but I think majority have like summer homes, and it's very outdoors, very active. But the winter is when they really start to embrace this hygge. And I think that's what you were sort of saying in the beginning, is finding ways to just have that, making life comfortable, making life cozy, and not being, rush, 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 and finding ways to embrace the winter in a way that makes it more joyful, I guess. So I guess the challenge for all of us is to bring some hygge into our lives.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very true. There are things, I'll tell people, you have those activities that you love that you can do in the spring and summer, but they're not as accessible. So it is important to go, what are the things during those winter months that you genuinely enjoy that are meaningful to you? If you think about it as well, the seasons, whether we have all of them or not, also tell us a lot about the taste that we desire, the things that we find traditional, the things that we find comforting. What we find is sometimes people don't recognize, honestly, the value of making those shifts, and we're trying to operate here all the way throughout the year. But I definitely encourage the process of learning yourself and learning what you need and what you need to bring in, what you enjoy that will help you look forward to this time. If this is a time to slow down, is it also a time for you to create or to develop? I often will encourage people, if you're spending more time in, find something that you can also do with your hands. That could be crochet, that could be art. Even if you feel like you're not an artist, you could do paint by numbers, but that whole dynamic of still kind of finding that slow yet steady pace is extremely helpful, but we have to be intentional about it. Otherwise, it can be a very hard season.
I love creating things with my hands, and I haven't personally noticed that what I do in the winter and what I do in the summer is very different. I don't like to do needlework in the summer because it's too warm and my hands get too warm. But in the winter, to sit there with a blanket over you and just do cross stitch, or my husband and I, we often do puzzles as well. I know there's not being creative, but it's very much focusing on something else, and we find we don't enjoy puzzle making so much in the summer as we do in the winter. So it is nice to have different hobbies for different seasons, and it's just incorporating the differences. And I'm guessing that the challenge for people who are employed, who have to find ways to fit, because obviously you have a job as 9 to 5, whether it's snowing or it's sunny or it's dark by 3 o'clock and you've got to go home in the dark, you've got to work in the dark, you come home in the dark. Is that doesn't change. So it's finding ways in your off hours or in your evenings to incorporate the slow, to change your routines. It's maybe not going jogging first thing in the morning or to the gym in the winter time, but maybe doing something else to help with fitness that's maybe slower or more gentle, because it's not so fun to run in the rain in the winter. I'm guessing.
No, I don't believe that it's fun. It depends on the person. Movement is definitely helpful, but just like we're talking about the things that we enjoy, we want to really kind of honor what kind of intuitive movements does our body look forward to in the summer. Is that stretching? Is that dance? Is that yoga? Is that cold plunges? Something to just kind of keep the circulation going. One thing that I often will encourage people to recognize as well, you don't need a lot of time to engage in those cozy, intentional, soothing activities. Even 15 minutes a day of doing something that you enjoy creates a level of dopamine that helps lift our mood. So for anyone who's listening and feels like, well, I work a long day, and when it's dark, we feel like the entire day is over, I still want to encourage you, set aside time, 15 to 30 minutes. But again, as little as 15 minutes is all that it takes for us to really feel the benefits. You don't have to have the hours that we're sometimes used to having because of all the extra daylight.
So one question I have for you is, you mentioned this happy light.
Mhm.
And I've heard in the past that to have like a daylight light bulbs or daylight lamps, is that the same thing, or
Mhm.
is a happy light just something slightly different to a daylight lamp?
So very similar, different names. The difference between the daylight lamp just might be it's larger and it's where it's located. A happy light essentially does the exact same thing, but it's usually portable. So it's something that you could move into different spaces in your house, or it's economical enough that you might have one in your bedroom and have another one in your workspace, but same philosophy.
So it'd be really useful for somebody when they're working from home. I'm thinking for myself, when I get back to England, is right, bit of shopping, get myself a happy lamp, because it's something you can, as you said, you can move it around. You can have it in your office at home. You can have it there with you, so that if you are working and you do have to work after dark, is then you've got that lamp to really help you just to keep going in a way, and doing it gently, and just to help you keep moving, keep motivated and focusing. And I think it can be really valuable to just have something like that to help you, because not everybody is lucky enough to have shorter work days, or to be able to change the hours that they work between the summer and the winter. And I know Lenka has worked really hard and spent a lot of years finding the way that suits her, and I'm in the process of doing the same. But sometimes it's not, it sounds easier than it is, and we do need to put in things into place. And I'm just thinking that having that lamp can really help people to just find their way through the darkness, especially if you live in the UK. It is always dark.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And it's important for us to look at, what do we need in our home, like in those larger living spaces, and what do we need in our workspace? The thing I like about happy lights as well is they're small enough that even if you work outside of the home, you could also add it to your desk without it being a major issue or impacting anyone else. And even when we do work from home, often, of course, if it's already dark outside, we're not getting the same amount of light in from that window. So I will, kind of encourage listeners to look around your workspace and really think about what you need. Do you need to bring in some more color? Would it be nice to have a back pillow that has some texture or that is bright? Is there a lap blanket that you can bring? Sometimes I will encourage people to have a blanket that is soft and maybe something that they want to kind of rub their hands around, or their weighted blankets. So for those that their seasonal affect also leans towards anxiety, a lap blanket, a weighted blanket can be something very nice to kind of place right on top of your lap to kind of create a little calm and a level of groundedness. But all of those are fairly accessible, don't cost a significant amount of money, and could just be just enough little changes for you to bring in, and then just be intentional about making sure that you are staying connected with people. I cannot say that enough. Even if it's a, Zoom date, if you can't get to them, but ideally going through the darkness long enough to go, I need to be in the space with another person, because we co-regulate and we energetically need to be in connection and feel the light and the love and the joy from other people that we care about.
That's awesome. But also thinking, going now beyond maybe the weather in the season that we're coming into the holiday season, Christmas season, whatever festivities people feel like celebrating, and talking about the need for being with people. This season can also bring a lot of pressure. Lots of people feel the pressure to be with their family, to spend more time together, to buy gifts, to please people, I know in Czech Republic, you need to clean extremely everything. You need to bake and have lots of sweet treats and lots of cookies and lots of unhealthy food. And you need to go around to see the family, which often requires lots of alcohol, which is not helpful at all. So do you have any advice to people that coming into this season, they could feel additional anxiety and stress and nervousness, not only because of the weather's already making our lives harder, but now we know we have the holidays ahead of us. We have the new year with New Year resolutions ahead of us. We have all the pressures of society and culture and family put on us to perform, to, be in good shape, to be financially stable, to buy gifts, to spend time with family, to please everyone. We can go on about all
I feel
the
like you're
things
like
coming up.
going out of breath just
I'm
mentioning
like, I'm just putting it out there because my
No.
plan for this Christmas is just to be away, away from everyone and ignoring Christmas, because I'm like, I don't want to be dealing with that. So I'm taking myself and my cat and I'm running away, far away from everyone.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. What you're doing is one of my most primary suggestions is to really look at what do you need. One of the things that I think we can forget about is sometimes we're placing all of this pressure on ourselves, and we really need to consider, am I doing these things because it's what I genuinely want to do, I enjoy doing, or am I trying to live up to a standard that someone else has set? I want you to all think about, what have you also already been through this year? So let's also acknowledge that some people are coming into this season and they're exhausted, they're grieving. It's been a rough year in a lot of different ways. They've already had a lot of change. And so it's not realistic to then expect yourself to be what you've always been, given everything that you've been through or the concerns or the worries that you may have. So first, what do I need? Right? We have to be able to identify that. I'll also sometimes encourage people, I want you to think about over the next few months, what are 3 things that you want to experience? Notice I did not say 3 things that you want to do. You want to experience more rest. You want to experience a slower pace. Maybe you want to experience more joy or laughter. So then that becomes your vision for all of the decisions that you make. Well, if I go and do all of these things and visit all of these people and make all of these sweets and drink, will I experience the joy and the rest and the slower pace that I said I needed? So if the answer is no, then it's up to me to adjust the expectations that I am placing on myself and communicate those expectations to other people and know they will be fine. I'll give an example. Sometimes we don't want to let other people down. Sometimes our temperament is to please other people. But you can say things like, I would love to connect with you. However, I'm not in a place that I have the capacity to do it. Let's plan some time in January. Let's plan times. Let's touch base in a few weeks and carve out some time together. So even though people are putting a lot of pressure on you, sometimes it just means we have to teach them that we're in a different season and that we don't all have to pack it in to 5 days, that we have a whole year to be together. Let's plan that time. But right now, if we're together, I'm not going to show up in the way that I want to show up and in the way that you would like. So let's plan some intentional moments together. And most people will be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, right? That's a great idea. But it starts with you acknowledging what you need, given everything that you've already been through. What do you want to experience? And then make choices that honor what you want to experience and then work from there.
And I love the fact that if we do this for ourselves, if we take a moment, we pause, we breathe, we consider, we really think about why are we feeling the pressure? Why do we feel we need to do that? What would it be that we genuinely want to do? And we take your advice and we reach out to people and we set boundaries, we make plans. We also give other people the permission to do the same. And I think this cycle is wonderful that the more people right now, me and Natalie, we already have this seed in our minds. And we obviously sharing this on the podcast with other people, and whoever listens and takes action, that only it's not for them, but it's for everyone else, that they will show up like this. It will share the seed and give permission to more people.
Yes, because a lot of families maintain traditions that they don't enjoy because it's what they've always done. And it just takes one person that is willing to shift and they're like, oh my goodness, this actually feels so much better than we've already, than what we've always done. But they didn't have the courage to do it. So I will often tell people is to find your slow no. which means don't be so quick to be agreeable. You don't have to immediately say yes to everything that everyone asks you. Be slow to say no, which means pause, take the time to step back and go, what else is on my plate? Where am I at financially? What is coming ahead? And then make a decision that will be sustainable. Any yes that comes with consequence is not ideal. Right? So anytime we say yes to something that we know later is not going to make us feel well physically because we've overindulged in ways that don't feel good to us, or we didn't get adequate rest, and we know that January is a busy season for work. So any yes that comes with consequence is not ideal for our self-care and our well-being.
Lenka and I often talk about the shoulding all over yourselves. And this time of year, I know you guys in America have Thanksgiving, and then it rolls into Christmas. And there's this, yes, but I should. Yes. And that shoulding, that you feel that you should spend time with family, you should provide the turkey, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. A lot of that pressure, especially around the festive season, it's this shoulding. And Lenka and I are stop shoulding all over yourselves. And I love how you said, find a way that gentle no, or find what is it that you really do want. If you like spending time with family, great, carry on doing it. But if you find that is really overwhelming for you, it takes too much energy, stop shooting all over yourself and start to really see, what do I want? And yes, it might ruffle a few feathers. It's not always an easy route, but like you said, it might jolt other people to think, I agree with you. Why are we doing this? Just because we've done it for the last however many years doesn't mean that we got to continue doing it. It just means that maybe some change needs to do. So when you were saying that, I'm thinking, there's those shoulds that we all do. So yes, I wanted to just bring that up, is stop shoulding all over yourselves, because it's not worth it. And like you said, is having that, when you say yes to something that has consequences, is remember, when you're saying yes to somebody else, you're saying no to yourself. And when you say yes to yourself, you saying no to somebody else, and you are more important. So I love how you utilize that gentle no, because that gentle no is for others, and you are empowering yourself by saying yes to you. So thank you for sharing that. That was really beautiful, and a great reminder. We are allowed to say no sometimes. We are allowed to say no.
Boundaries are a great thing. And, when we say things like should to ourselves, that actually fires off the pain center of our brain. It is an oppressive dynamic that usually when we say should, like even me saying it right now, I can feel this little tinge, even though I don't have it connected to anything, because it's often a statement of manipulation. It's often a way that we're kind of bullying ourselves into doing something that we don't genuinely want to do. And we're still very capable of moving forward in life and getting things done without it coming through this lens of beating ourselves up, because you don't want to should yourself into resentment, right? I'm here. I don't want to be here. I never asked to do all of these things. This is miserable. And then you go in and pretend you're great. That's not ideal. And that doesn't make for a happy and healthy home or a happy and healthy family.
So this is a part of the podcast that we take out and we put it onto Patreon. And what it is this is our gold nugget section. Hop on to our Patreon account to get this episode's amazing and wonderful gold nugget. So thank you for sharing your energy with us, your time, your expertise, and sharing such wonderful tips with us. But now's the time where we ask you for any links that you have, so that anybody who's listening thinks, you know what, I need help with this, or this is just, hang on a minute, this is something that I've been wondering about, but I didn't realize what it was. How can people connect with you? And also, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure. So the book that I have, there's two of them. The first one, the most primary one, is called Expired Mindsets: Releasing Patterns That No Longer Serve You Well. And it centers around this premise of we all have these survival skills, attitudes, and mindsets that we've had in place that we feel like this is what helped me get through life until it doesn't. And then we realize that things aren't working as well because the things that we've always done don't work in this season because they've expired. They've run their course, but it's really scary and we don't know what else to do. So it's a beautiful book that really walks you through your personal story. And I share bits and pieces of my own story and kind of put myself in the seat first around how to peel back those layers and realize, are there any outdated mindsets or beliefs that you have towards yourself that are kind of keeping you from living up to your highest potential? And then at the end of the book, or in the end of each chapter, there's reflection questions, mindfulness activities, breathing, and yoga asanas for those that also want to incorporate that as well. And then the second book I'll just mention real quickly is called Get Off the Scale and Heal. And it's really just centered on those who are at a place where they want to heal their relationship with food. And so it talks a lot about not just eating to stuff your belly, but eating to nourish your soul, and what's the difference and how to uncover maybe some of the emotional things that are the driver for your eating. If you would like to stay connected with me, one of the easiest ways to do that is my website, which is just www.drcharryse.com, and Charryse is CHARRYSE. And from there, it will link you to my Instagram, my LinkedIn, and then I have a podcast called Dear Dr. Charryse.
Thank you for that. And your books sound really wonderful. And of course, all your links will be in the description. So anybody that can just scroll down and click on your links. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, thank you for sharing your time with us, your wisdom, your energy. It's been really educational for me because I've heard of SAD, but I've never really paid much attention to it. And it's something that is definitely worth thinking about. And I'm thinking, even if you don't necessarily suffer with SAD, but just having that lamp in your house can just help, and doing more candlelight and just being more gentle. So you don't need to be sad in order to just do these gentle things. And I love all those little things that you shared with us. So thank you so much. And for our listeners, what have you got from today? Is there something triggered in your mind and you're thinking, oh, this sounds like something that I'm maybe struggling with? Maybe you're finding life much harder in the dark winter's days. Or maybe this is something that you're thinking is not so much for me, but I know somebody. We would love to know your thoughts on what we spoke about today, even if you think that SAD is not something that you've really heard about, it's not something that you acknowledge. That's okay. But we'd love to just hear any of thoughts that you've got, or any sort of epiphanies that have happened through listening to this episode. We just love to hear from you. And in the meantime, we'll talk to you next time. Bye.